then Efraín Gutiérrez, who's the producer and the director, please don't bury me alive. And having said that, right, and saying the movies, man, it's showtime, so showtime, here we go. Hit it.
Well, thank you for coming out today, and I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, a set of background for our speaker, so you can truly appreciate who he is and what he's been able to achieve through his filmmaking and work in the arts generally. And then we're going to talk about his first film, Please Don't Bury Me Alive. You can see the poster here. It's a completely bilingual film, no subtitles. You can see also it's very rascoche that when they printed, they forgot to put the word vivo in, so they got the Sharpies out and wrote vivo in for the Spanish part of the title. I'm going to start with the most important thing. Efraín is a former student of ELAC. He's he came here a long time ago, about 45 years ago, from Texas to kind of break into the industry. And instead he decided, in order to make films about Chicanos in the way that reflected the reality that they were living, he had to leave that, and he had to do it on his own. And you'll see some clips from key points in this film, and we'll talk about it. We'll have a chance for a Q&A at the end. We're going to leave a copy with Professor Flores for the libraries, in case you want to see it. We have copies here as well that you can get for half price, and get the director to sign as well if you want. That's $10. I don't know if you all remember DVDs, but that's what they're on. I want to start first by just thanking the Chicano Studies Department, the Vincent Price Art Museum, and ELAC in general. The Chicano Studies Research Center at UCLA has really enjoyed a very productive relationship through the Vincent Price Art Museum and collaborations. And we started with a simple observation. Every time we do something at UCLA, all the people we know from East LA would say, "Why is it over there, man? First I got to drive for 6 hours, get a hotel, and then I have to pay $12 for parking." So and then we'd see these great programs here at Vincent Price. I don't know if you realize it, but without a doubt, the museum with the most diverse programming in this city, which would also mean in this country, is the museum right outside the door here. The art critic for the LA Times did this study, and he was kind of looking at how many solo exhibitions in the major museums had women. It was about 10 to 20%. And I thought, well, he forgot another question. What about people of color? So I did that research, and we found is all the major museums, it was even worse for artists of color. And then I thought, well, why don't I look at the Vincent Price Art Museum and see what that looks like in terms of their solo exhibits. It was 80% women, it was 80% people of color. But not only that, these are some really exciting shows. You're seeing the cutting edge work done by people who are often showing their work for the first time in a museum setting. And this is where their career will begin. ELAC is renowned for the artists that have come through here as well, both as teachers and students. So I want to thank Eddie, I want to thank Karen Rapp, who I think is here, for that collaboration, because what we decided to do was every time something exciting happens here, we try to bring it to UCLA, and whenever we do something people think is exciting, we try to bring it back here and to have a real exchange. This year we have the first ever program that I helped set up in the country to create a pipeline for undergraduates who are interested in the arts and who may want to become a curator after going to graduate school. And what we've done is we've set up a mentorship program that supports students with fellowships for 3 years in order to engage them with major museums. Last year, about 3 of those students came from ELAC, and 2 of them have now transferred to UCLA. So we want to keep that dialogue alive. Certainly you can feel free to contact us at the center in terms of our summer internships and what have you. Now to our main attraction. I first became aware of Efraín about 30 years ago when I was doing research on Chicano cinema. And I met with the Moctezuma Esparza and Greg Nava and all the folks that you probably, Edward James Olmos, and we became friends. But as I was looking at what people were saying, everybody kept mentioning Please Don't Bury Me Alive as really being the first Chicano movie. Not just because the poster says it up there. Okay. But no one knew who he was. And I'd ask him, well, did you ever meet the guy? He's like, oh man, he is wild, you know, I don't know if you'd want to meet him. He just, you know, he finances his films by killing people. And I was like, what? No, he does this. And everybody I talked to had an even bigger story. And I spent a better part of about 10 years going around the country whenever I traveled, and I would say, do you know where Efraín Gutiérrez is? Hey, do you know where Efraín Gutiérrez is? And I said that so many times that in 1996, he ran into some folks and they said, you know, Chon Noriega is looking for you. And by then, I wasn't sure I wanted to find him, you know, because I'd heard so many stories and kind of given up on it, you know, and by then I was a professor, and I came home, my apartment, and I played, there was a message, and said, hey, Chon Noriega, this is Efraín Gutiérrez. I hear you're looking for me. I was like, uh-oh. Fortunately, he left his phone number, right? I called back and I said, you know, I've been looking for your films. He said, you know what? We just found the only print of this film. The Mexican film industry had said they were going to distribute it, and they actually just took it away because it was competing with their market, the Spanish language theaters. This was the only surviving example of that film that we knew of. Efraín hopped in a station wagon, I think, or a van, and with his whole family and his daughter's best friend across the street, and that daughter's daughter. And they all got in this car, because I said, you know, we'll give you a UPS number and you can just ship the films to the archive here. No, I want to hand deliver it to you. Shows up. We get the film into the archive. I raise money over the next few years. We restore this. We find the other two feature films he did. Amor Chicano es para siempre, and the title that's in brackets is Or Until Tomorrow Morning. True, right?
24 hours.
24 hours. And Run Tecato Run. These were all made in the 70s. They were profitable using the Spanish language theater system in the US, and they basically each funded the next film. But they were all gone. We found them over the course of about 6 years and worked to restore them. They're at the UCLA Film and Television Archive, and we're now in the process of fulfilling our commitment to bring them out in DVD so that people can have access to them, and they can also be used in the classroom. Earlier this year, my dreams were achieved when we found out that this film, after really pushing, entered the National Film Registry of the Library of Congress. This is a list of about 600 films that are considered the essential films of American film heritage. They only had about 4 other Latinos on there, but they didn't have the first film that was made. It was made outside of the industry. So that was really, it was really for me, a transformative moment. I walked around on a cloud for about a month because that's what we're aiming for. This film, and this isn't the only context you can appreciate the film. It is the first Chicano film. It is a thoroughly bilingual film made in the United States. It is part of the actual language culture of our society. You can look at it from the point of view of the Mexican film industry, which at the time was making Chicano exploitation films. So that's the broader framework. I wanted to introduce Efraín. You look at us and you see two people that are almost like mirror images of each other. And that's the way I felt when we first met. I tried to explain this to my wife. It's like, he's just exactly like me, except you would never think that. What I want to say about Efraín is that he's a lifelong learner. He's probably one of the smartest people I know, both in terms of the breadth of his knowledge, but the ability to take it and turn it into something good. And that's what he started with this film. He's still doing it today in terms of developing a community-based art center. I think we'll sit down now and we'll start a little bit of a conversation and take you through some of this film and kind of hopefully leave some time for questions and answers. I know you'll have to go on to class, and I don't think Efraín can write enough notes for you all. So, Efraín. So just very quickly, a little biographical stuff. Efraín is from San Antonio, and in his early childhood, he was part of the families that would migrate up to Michigan and Minnesota and do the Ohio, the whole Midwest, to pick vegetables, pick fruit. And that often meant that they were taken out of school. And they would travel parallel to the braceros. So you'd have trucks full of men, and then you'd have cars full of families traveling around. I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that, but also as a consequence, when did you graduate from high school?
It took 20 years before I got out of high school, but no, we were migrants at the time in San Antonio. Like about 50% of the population would leave, around April to go work in the fields up there. We didn't come to California. We went up north. We would go to Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, pick tomatoes, cherries, whatever. And we would leave in April approximately, and then we would go. After that, we would go to Texas, pick cotton, and Snyder, Lubbock, Plainview, out in that area would be cotton all the way till January. So schooling for us was basically January to April. So, at the time we had the highest dropout rate, of course, because it's a stigma, being, when you're poor and then you're migrant and then you're in school, it's like being, I guess, I don't mean to insult, but, we were special in the sense that we were slower because, we were behind by the time, we're in the 7th grade, they've already had this year just about gone by the time we get into class. So anyway, so it was difficult, but eventually I was 20 years old by the time I graduated from high school after a couple of incidents that I had some problems with. But at school for us, I went to the poorest school district, Edward Independent School District, which is compared to, they always compared to one of the schools out here. But anyway, the teachers weren't really caring at the time for our schooling. I was basically told to go to auto mechanics, and I would say, no, I don't want auto mechanics. Go to the print shop. I don't want the print shop. I had to literally, if it wasn't one teacher, Ms. Jones, I would have probably dropped out around that time. But she got me, and I wasn't prepared, but then, the Vietnam War is going on and everything, and it's kind of confusing what we're trying to do. But I ended up going to school. And interesting enough, when I was here in California, they did for Mensa, an IQ test, and I scored 142. So, they proved to me that, I wasn't stupid or dumb, it just, the people that didn't seem to understand and how to reach us or help us. And I do like that, there's a lot of help now in the schools. I went to school back in the 70s when I went to, 60s, I'm sorry, 66 when I first went to high school, to junior college in San Antonio. And back then, it was something like you sink on your own or you're not going to make it. In other words, there was no tutoring really available. The professors weren't, helpful in the sense that they really didn't care. We even had professors that were just professors because they were trying to avoid getting drafted to Vietnam, and they would admit it. So, this is the kind of, when I went back, as I came back to school, I do everything backwards, but in 2005, I finally got a bachelor's after going to about 5-6 different colleges, starting here with East LA. So the thing is that the education hopefully has improved, and when I went back, there was a lot of help now in schools, and I hope that you all take advantage of the tutoring that's available. Some subjects, I don't know if it's still the problem, but especially with women, I know my wife had a lot of problem with algebra, and a lot of times that kind of slows you. But hey, keep doing it, man. I think, we all can make it. But anyway, that'll cover my part.
You eventually got your BA when you were how old?
I got 55, 60. I got my BA pretty late.
It's funny, he did it with his daughter. It was a race to see who would finish first. What we're going to do is just look at the opening sequence. It's a few minutes long. Beginning of the first Chicano feature film. Pay attention to the issue, to the presentation of music and language, but also how the issues are kind of made clear for this film. And then we'll ask Efraín to say a little bit about it, what motivated it.
I like that intro. If you listen to the words of the music that's starting out at the beginning, that comes more out of the Azteca, the way that they would, go and bury the procession kind of thing and stuff. So, we did it at Cordomanon, but I'm saying that's what the words come from. It's over 500 years. Those are not original words. It's kind of words that we got from native Azteca.
Okay, and this is the way it would have been seen by people at the time. We do have a subtitle track on it for the DVD, but we're just showing it the way you would have seen it.
Yeah.
Hi.
Que Cristo, que te llamó, te reciba, y que el coro de los ángeles te introduzca en el cielo. Dale, Señor, el descanso eterno y brille para él la luz eterna. Padre clementísimo, te recomendamos el alma de nuestro hermano Ricardo, apoyados en la certeza de que resucitará en el último día con Cristo y con todos los que han muerto con Cristo. Señor Dios omnipotente y eterno, tú que tienes señorío sobre los vivos y los muertos, que estás dispuesto a compadecerte de todos y que sabes quiénes serán tuyos en el futuro por la fe y por las obras, te rogamos insistentemente por los que viven en carne mortal en este mundo y por aquellos que ya, liberados del cuerpo, pasaron al mundo futuro. Que la intercesión de todos tus santos, por tu amor paternal y por tu compasión, dales el perdón de todos sus pecados, por Cristo nuestro Señor. Que su alma y el alma de todos los fieles difuntos, por la misericordia de Dios, descansen en paz.
These medals in the name of your son, Ricardo Hernandez.
I don't want no medal. I want my son. Mi hijo es el que quiero.
¿Y por ese cuánto me van a dar?
Let's make a deal right now. Nomás los quiere para sus cochinas guerras de Vietnam.
You stop it? I want to go back to the beginning of that clip after we speak a little bit. So, you were very young back then, huh? So, you're about 26 years old when you started. What were you thinking? What led you to make this film?
Well, like I said, I was here in Los Angeles, in East LA, and at the time I was trying to break into the movies. I was very naive, very ignorant, I wasn't even trained, so I came here to try to learn something. And I always thought that, why couldn't we as Chicanos make movies? Hollywood, everybody was making it. And back then, Ricardo Montalban, had a school that he was helping, young actors and stuff. And Anthony Quinn had a show called The Man in the City or something like that. As a matter of fact, he came visit us here with some theater students, and we had an opportunity to talk with him. But in the time, I asked them why couldn't we do it, and they kept saying no, that it couldn't be done, that the Screen Actors Guild wouldn't allow it, all kinds of different excuses. I even talked to Luis Valdez from Teatro Campesino. I thought, man, this guy's awesome. Teatro can do anything. Luis, why don't we do it? And he said, no, friends. Anyway, around that time, I was sent from here to audition for the last movie that John Wayne made, Cowboy or something. And they had asked me, and they had called me back. So I was more than my agent was pretty sure I was going to get the part. But they didn't like the reading that I did. And it's a long story, but I know most of it is delayed, but I won't have time to explain that.
Tell them what you read. What did you perform?
But anyway, so they told me that at first they didn't like the reading because, they wanted something different. So anyway, I went back and I did Yo Soy Joaquin, I'm Joaquin by Jorge Gonzalez. And for those of you that know, that it's kind of strong, passionate, And I thought I did a great job. But, just before I finished, they stopped me and they told me, no, Efraín, look, we like you, the casting area, but, can you tame it down? I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean? He said, well, Mexicans don't act like that. What do you mean that Mexicans don't act like that? I said, well, Mexicans are not strong, passionate. We would like for you to be, they couldn't explain it, but I kind of figured. I said, what you're asking me to be to be another, for those of you that might remember, and I don't mean to insult the man because it's not his fault or whatever, but there was an actor named Pedro Gonzalez who was a sidekick to a lot of movies that John Wayne did, but he was always the flunky, So I said, basically you want me to be another Pedro Gonzalez, a younger version of Pedro Gonzalez, because they needed a Mexican for that movie. And I said, I'm sorry, but I guess I'm not going to be the part. So I walked away. And after that's when I decided to go back to San Antonio. And when I was here, I also met, I joined this theater group that, what's his name from Sesame Street? Emilio, the first Chicano that came out of Sesame Street. He was directing a Chicano kind of group here, and I became part of it. So he took us to the San Fernando Valley to see the Cesar Chavez and the organizing, how they were organizing. So when we just went as visitors, but that's when I saw Teatro Campesino and what they were doing, and I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to reach people. I want to get people involved. So I said, I'm going back to Texas, and that's when we started in '71, the Chicano Arts Theater, and then somewhere along the line after that, we went into why can't we make our own movie? Said we couldn't do it over here. And we decided that we would try it with the idea of going to universities, colegios. But when we finished, we realized that it was the first Chicano movie. And it just caught on fire, Back then, we had people waiting in line to see our movies. But sadly, we sold it before we could get it into California full force. We got it into Texas, we got Southwest, we got Detroit, Utah, Colorado. But in California, we really didn't get, only I spotted a couple of things years later, not at the time that they wanted or they were prepared for it.
So we'll look at an early scene where Efraín's character is engaging with teatro, and I think it's Sabino Garza who is the screenwriter of the film as well. And the discussion they have around the role of teatro at this time, and it gives a kind of autobiographical context, but it's also very true to that moment. So we'll see that and talk a little bit more about teatro and the relationship to early Chicano cinema. Yeah.
Yes.
Love y peace. Amor y paz. Si una vieja no hace el amor, la agarra y ¡pam!
Hey, I know what you're about to say. Yeah, I'm always glad he went to Ricky's. Yeah, he went to Ricky's school, and I know him about him.
Yo, ¿verdad? Es más, ¿tú metes meses? Yo no fui, vos, mira la barbita, vos. No, yo no soy como la misma. No, tú nunca ganas, vos. No me comas. Te criamos macho. Me quedó el trabajo.
Hey, no eres Sabino. Did you go to school with Ricky, sir?
Yo, hey, you're Ricky's brother, right? Alejandro. Oye, I'm sorry to make Ricky's funeral, pero te acompaño tus sentimientos.
Gracias.
Hombre,
Ni modo de especiales. Pero dime, ¿qué es este jale del teatro? What's it about?
hombre, pues una hora de base nos juntamos por pelear el sistema y we do things about the things that are happening in el barrio. Y con ese jale, pues, we do it.
Ya, pero ¿qué es la onda?
No, pues dejar de tratar de aliviar a las razas porque se animen, porque se organicen, que sigan sus derechos. And that's the only part of the things we do. We also do things en cultura y en historia y cosas así. Porque este negro no vaya con los libros, los nombres de los pinches libros se puso china en los colegios. Pero one thing que se quiere es que los viejitos ahí en el barrio tienen knowledge, but that knowledge is based on the truth. Y eso es lo que nos interesa a nosotros, la verdad.
Pues ese jale está donde aquí es.
¿Por qué no es teatro? We should be used to help, ¿no?
Oh, no, chale.
¿Pero por qué no, Marco?
No, pues I got other things to do, sir.
Yeah, but we don't have things to do, man. Pero pues eso es como que no para la raza, ¿no?
Pues I got my own way of helping la raza.
I guess you're right. I guess we don't have to find a way to help out. Bueno, pero no, I wish you would change your mind, man. We should if you use your help.
Pues if I change my mind, I'll let you know, sir.
Ahora no está aquí.
I te watch you.
Ándale, está bien.
Say a little bit about teatro.
Well, see, that teatro, there's just a portion missing because I always have women like, that's very ugly, when you, a man. But what we're showing in it, you see the whole piece, the actual teatro, what we're showing is the machismo that was going on at the time with los hombres and how, women were being treated and at the same time, how we were so macho within each other, but when it came to fighting the system or fighting the people that really hurted us, we tend to be weak, and we tend not to. Anyway, that was the purpose of that. But the reason that is that it's based on a true story of a friend of mine, and I'm kind of the guy that's doing the teatro, and the guy I'm portraying is kind of my friend that went to prison, because it's based on my best friend from high school that went to prison, and how we kind of took different roads when we ended up being together. It's a different story, but I'm saying basically that's what's going on. Alex ended up going to prison, and I think that the teatro and my involvement in the movimiento and everything kind of saved me from being one of the statistics that I'd probably be in prison right now too.
I want to ask about it. It's one of the things that's amazing about this film you look at other attempts to kind of put Chicano stories in a narrative. Every woman's the Virgin of Guadalupe, and every man is the Aztec warrior. This guy's got soul. He's got a social vision, but he at every turn goes in the wrong direction. He's not just macho. He's very sexist. He's racist. In the next scene we'll see he's grappling with whether to go into the drug trade, right? And that is the basis of a story that's ultimately about Chicano empowerment. So can you say a little bit about how that comes out of teatro and out of your own experiences to try to tell a different kind of story, one that's grounded, as you say, in your own experiences?
Well, see, I guess a lot of you could probably identify with the same thing that I went through. That I grew up in a very poor barrio, in San Antonio, and when you grow up, we're very, like I said, we're very native because we're very communal, in los barrios, and so you tend to know who the leaders are and who the people that kind of run things and who you go for money and who but there's no really doctors or lawyers or major businessmen in the barrios, so you don't really have these role models that you can relate to or talk to or get some help from. And so when I made the movie, I was trying to show what I saw, what was in front of me, what I grew up with. And when we made the movie, we got a lot of criticism from very conservative Mexican Americans, that felt that I had done the worst thing that could have been possible, to make a movie about a dealer, a drug dealer, a guy going to prison. Like, why could I make it about a doctor or a lawyer? It was sadly, I didn't grow up around doctors or lawyers or teachers or anything like that. So my first experience was in something, but at the same time to explain why we, and that's what I'm trying to do in this film. And like I said, I don't want anybody to try to emulate what we're doing, but what I try to do in this film is try to make you understand why this guy, why Alex, why there's thousands of Alex in prison, and it's ridiculous, and when I started understanding the legal system, how, especially in, the guy that got killed, the judge, John Wood, well, that was the guy we were dealing with, the federal judge, John Wood, that we call him actually John. I mean, that guy was just giving the maximum to every minority that was coming in there, and he was the one that did, I couldn't name him, it was John Wood, but that's what I'm talking about, that's the guy that sentences, because that's the guy that sentenced him, and then eventually my brothers that also went to prison, were the same guy that sentenced him. Long story, but they even tried to get me on a conspiracy charge to send me up for 15 years. So, this is some of the things that we in the neighborhoods, because, I don't deny my brother was involved, in drug dealing, my cousin, they went to prison, they got, but at the same time, it was a whole different, that it's hard to explain how all these things go on, entrapments and what have you. But I always felt that Alex was not a bad guy. He was my best friend, and I understood him, and I knew all his faults, but I also knew how hard he was having with his family, school, his addiction that he ended up doing. This is what we're trying to show, without color coding it, what's going on with this Alex.
It's interesting because now if you're watching CNN or Fox, it's hard to tell them apart. But as they're covering the riots in Baltimore, the people coming with the camera that they're trying to get to apologize, right, are really telling that same kind of story, saying, okay, maybe the reaction broke the law, but what do you call it when police are killing unarmed people from behind? So it's interesting, the kind of the sad continuity of that. But that this film was really breaking new ground in trying to say, let's take a complicated look at this. The guy you see handing the medal, you'll see at the end, he's the judge at the end of this film. And as Efraín said, this is an actual figure. He was ultimately the first sitting judge to ever be assassinated, and not by a racial minority, because he was putting a lot of people away. And Efraín's attempt is to kind of tell the story of his impact, but also the ethical struggling that somebody with really no opportunities is having as they try to chart a life for themselves.
And one of the things, you see the mother throw the medals, but you see the father pick up the medals. Yeah. See, that's another thing that we have in our, like, in that, in the movie, like my cousin, we couldn't run away from Vietnam. because our parents, how can you, like, you gotta fight, like they fought, they went, they served. So, you can't question, even if the whole damn thing was wrong, that I questioned, because I'm not a Vietnam veteran. And, now I'm being helped a lot by the American GI Forum, which is kind of interesting, but I'm not a veterano, but I do respect a veterano, and I understand what they're going. But at the time, Sabino Garza, the playwright, the guy that's playing, he served 2 tours in Vietnam, and he wasn't happy with it. We all agreed, that's not right. But but at the same time, that's what I say. See the mother, get rid of it, but the father, here we come, that pride, that machismo thing that we have to abide or follow. Or
Yeah. No, and there's some amazing scenes between your character and the father over these very competing views. One is a very political and socioeconomic analysis of what's happening, which is and then the father's, which is very much about tradition and authority. We're going to look at the scene now where an undercover cop is trying to get the Alex character to participate in a heroin deal. So.
Yeah, man, we're in heaven. And this is my angel. Hey, oh, that's a pretty good haircut we made last year, huh? It was all right. Hey, Alex, I gotta talk to you. Yeah, I've got a proposition for you. You accept it from the garage. Forgive me, Lizzie. What is it? I need to get him over the half pound of white gold. Hey, man, I don't miss all of that shit. Wait a minute. I got 20,000. It's all yours. All you gotta do is just give me the stuff. I don't know where to start looking. I can't get it myself. So you're it, man. Look, I get the 20 grand, and you get the stuff. How about it? Is it a deal? No, man, forget it. Alex, man, you don't want the job. You asked me to cut my throat, man. Forget it. You white people are really something. Just because you see us blow our minds with all kind of shit, you automatically think we like it. Hell, man. The only reason we think this shit is because that's the only way we can exist in this bullshit we call America. You white foreigners came to us land and you try to change our language, our names, our traditions, even our religion. Everything has to be white. You try to change it because you don't understand us. Hell, man, we're not like the blacks. We don't want equality. If we ever became like you, we end up in the gutter. But it's kind of hard to admit to this damn cop-out. But this is the only way we can take it, man. Or else we'll go insane. Shit. No, man. Don't shit, man. The pigs will leave us alone as long as we do the shit ourselves. But as soon as we start selling to funky whites that can't handle the shit, then they come down our ass. No, man. I'm just beginning to like you. And that's hard, because I don't trust white people. But I guess we have to make a better world somehow. So forget it, man.
It's one of the best arguments for using drugs, man. Can you say a little bit about, I remember when we first spoke about this, you had, I think, one of the best historical analyses of what was happening in your lifetime around the drug trade coming through El Paso.
San Antonio. Well, like I said, one of my cousins was, in the 60s, was one of the big dealers in San Antonio. And, he had a club, and, it seemed like I could see everything that was going on there because it was like Studio 54, whatever, from New York. I mean, we had the Latin Quarter, and I mean that club was just, and of course everybody was hanging around there, and so I got to see that when the cocaine first really hit the let's say San Antonio in the 70s. Like it was given away, and my cousin would get it. And I knew a little bit about coke because I'd been in California and I'd already run into it over here with some people that I knew, you know, lawyers and doctors were doing it in the 60s, big time here in Hollywood, you know, all the Hollywood people. I remember this guy Murphy come out, and alias Smith and Jones was dating this girl that I was also dating back then. And I mean, I went to a party with him, and Jesus, you know, I didn't understand because I'd never seen that, and that's when I really ran into coke, like in 71, 72, something like that. So by 74, 75, you know, when it started showing up in Texas, I remember that they would literally give it to me because, you know, they had no use. They would send the heroin to him, whatever amount it was, but they would also include a couple of, and so, you know, I was started, and I remember because the guy that started the M in Texas, you know, in Leavenworth, Lucio Castro, it was a friend of my cousin, and I used to be bartender for him at one time, you know, when he had in the 60s, when he had a bar. Anyway, that guy went on, and he's the one that's credited for starting the M in Leavenworth. But like I tell people, he didn't start it like the M that, you know, that you know about killing, and it was more started like a union, like, you know, like organizing in prison, because when he got to Leavenworth, in prison, you know, the Mexicanos were doing all the labor, you know, they didn't clean anything, and the Italianos were in control. There were like 50 Italianos in control of Leavenworth, and there was like 500 Chicanos in there, so he just said, hey, look at the numbers, you know, and that's why, you know, they flipped over, and the Chicanos have been running Leavenworth, you know, almost since. But he's gone, losing it to death. But anyway, what I'm getting at, these people, you know, would freak out, like, no, and then all of a sudden, within 3 months, that guy was doing like an ounce a day, you know, snorting, and before you know it, like, everybody was doing it, and then all of a sudden, all the bands were doing it, all the Tejano bands, you know, all the Chicano bands. I mean, everywhere you go on, I even tell people, I went to Trinity University, and there were students that were wealthy students in the 70s, you know, I'm talking about even, you know, I don't want to mention it because I got in trouble with the FBI if I mention that guy. Maybe they'll follow me again. But I mean, even, you know, one of the sons of the directors, you know, all these people are young kids, you know, they're all hippies. They don't see anything wrong, and they weren't getting busted. But as soon as we started getting into it, you know, boom, 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 boom. So I saw a lot of, you know, like just exploding the way that cocaine, you know, by the 70s was out of control.
I think this film is important for marking the creation of a race and class-based market for something that had really throughout its history been aimed at the middle class and the upper class. The dialogue that you see here is one of a number of exchanges that are trying to draw out the dynamics that are in play, the racial privilege and the impact that has relative to the judicial system, or how things are perceived in terms of, in this case, you know.
Yeah, because see, one of the things that was going on back before 72 or something like that, that's when they came out with the conspiracy law. The conspiracy law before, you know, like they would bust you, and the only one that was holding, let's say, would be going to prison or to jail, be arrested, and the rest people would be let go. But if you're sitting in a room now and I hear a conversation, well, I'm involved and I'm going to go to prison just as much as they do. So then instead of taking one at a time, they started taking 5, 10 people at a time. You know, when they would do a big, you know, bust for everybody, they're rounding everybody up, not necessarily because they were holding or because they're selling, but because they happen to know or they think they know, and that's, you know, and the other thing is when we see here, you'll see the difference in the federal system, which I was not aware you have to wear coat and tie, and, you know, all these procedures that we Chicanos, especially if you're not educated, you know, you're not used to going to a court with a suit and tie to visit, to see somebody get tried. You know, you see some of that here.
So I want to emphasize something about this work as well that you're not going to see a full example of. But in addition to teatro, which a lot of early Chicano filmmakers turned to for a narrative and a performance framework, Efraín is really notable for bringing in conjunto music, bringing in Spanish language music. And almost every film has entire sets or songs that are done in an actual space with non-actors. And so it's almost like documentary footage of what kind of public spaces were like at that time. Even the clips we've shown, you'll always hear ambient music that's being played or performed in that scene, because that's what was really happening. So you've got teatro, you've got music, but you have two other things as well that were central to the Chicano movement, which is part of what this is documenting in the early 70s, is poetry and also muralism. So we're going to show a scene that I consider it's the most powerful scene. It's my favorite. I know it's Irma's favorite. It's about 3 minutes, in which the Alex character is ultimately deciding his future. And what you're going to hear is a kind of a poetic narration. It's trying to set a context for his decision. But in the end, the decision is to do the drug deal. And that will lead to his arrest. So it's a very complex move that this film is doing, and it will end with a very symbolic documentation of a mural being painted. And I just pay attention to that at the end as well.
I live on the west side of San Antonio. All my life, even when I was a little kid, I've been thinking about Chicano. I've been wondering what would happen to all of us. It's a strange thing, living in a world that makes you different from the rest of the people. Yeah, I know. Some of us are like you. I want to be like you, but only to a point. You see, I'm old enough now to know that what I really want is some way of bringing together both my worlds. There's a lot to be said for living in a nice tract house, or for pulling out of the barrio and heading for the suburbs. The thing is, I don't want that. That may be hard for some of you to believe, but I really like being Chicano. But it's only been in the last few years that so many of us have had the guts torn up to the fact that we are Chicanos, and we're going to stay that way. Now, how the hell am I going to be Chicano and competing in an angry world with you Puchi people? Well, that's part of a problem. That's part of a big problem. Who the hell said we have to be the same? That is ridiculous. There must be room in this country for me to be Chicano in dignity. Americano in my own way. We are the bus boys of your meals, yet we cannot see the menu. We are the builders of your city, yet we cannot consult with the architect. Countless streets are named after me, yet no one knows my name.
I always liked that too. That really, I had done that like 2 years before. One of the first pieces I did it, and we won second place before I even knew about anything. And I thought this really expressed, what I felt at the time, and I think that a lot of us felt, and that we're different, but we all don't have to be the same. There's nothing wrong with that. But you should, to me, I think, you should be proud of who you are. And I think Chicanos, we are proud and we should be proud. We got problems, but you know, I think that what I've always tried to do is just respect people and have pride. My family, my kids, you know, to always respect everybody, but at the same time have pride in who you are. And to me, I've always labeled myself, people say, why do you call yourself a Chicano filmmaker? Why not just a filmmaker? Because I really want people to know who I am. And I think that when I say I'm a Chicano filmmaker, that should give them an idea of where I'm coming from. Because like I told Figueroa, the reporter earlier, you know, that I kind of limited myself in my audience because I targeted. I never went after a white audience. I never went after a black audience. I went after a Chicano audience. Even when we did it, the whole thing is in English and Espanol, mixture depends on who we talk to. If we talk to your father, mother in Espanol, if we're talking about each other, maybe mix it up. If we're talking to somebody in English, you know, we talk. So that's the way we grew up, and that's the way I wanted to show it, and that's the way we did it. Because I was not really looking at anything, but I just thought we need to do our own thing first before, you know. So, you know, maybe that's why I've limited myself in that regard, that, you know, I never reached out to a bigger audience. And so in that regard, you know, if it wasn't for Chon, I probably would have been forgotten a long time ago. Nobody would even know that, you know, we did this work before. And so I thank you for that, Chon.
Well, I thank you. This film, I think if you don't speak Spanish, you can figure out what's happening. And you understand the meaning. You may not understand the words, but you understand the meaning. I think it works both ways. If you don't speak English, but if you follow the film, there's a real arc to it, from being predominantly Spanish to shifting to an institutional framework where the language is English. And what intrigued me about this scene you just saw, it's really addressed conceptually to a white audience. You pushy people. It's not saying the pushy people, it's saying you pushy people. He's speaking not directly or factually to other people, but in his own conceptualizing of his aspirations and of who he is. He's speaking to the people that symbolize the larger society, that control the larger society. What I'm intrigued by is that this passage, this is like an I am Joaquin. This is a statement of an identity that is cultural, it's linguistic, it's place-based, it's from that neighborhood, and it's cultural. But it is also the moment just before he decides to break the law and will be sentenced to prison. So it's very complex in that regard, because it's not letting him off the hook because there is a racist institution, but because he makes the wrong choice, it's not letting the institution off the hook either. So we'll look at the end of that and then open it up for questions. And realize this film started in '72 when it begins. It was finished in 1976, and that's when it's released. It is outperforming All the President's Men. It's outperforming Hollywood films in South Texas. But he had to basically what they call four-walling. He had to go rent theaters. And he had to put his own ads in radio and newspapers to get an audience. And I think even Efraín didn't expect an audience to show up, but they did. And the film was a huge success, because for the first time people weren't just going to the movies to see Chicanos on the screen. They were oftentimes seeing themselves, literally, on the screen. Oh, I was in that scene that was in the back. So there was and if you weren't, you knew that people that you knew, or people from your neighborhood were in that film. And this is something that had never happened before. So we'll look at this last scene, pay attention to the judge as well. And then I think we have this, it's the last title card, which is, because it's still 72, but it's saying that his character is eligible for parole in 1976. So that's, I think, where the film is trying to turn it back to the audience and say, here's where the hope is. What do you do when you leave the theater and you're free? And how do you proceed with your life, and how do you address these issues? So we'll watch that, and then we'll just open it up to Q&A so you have time to ask questions.
Pero la master that got tried ahorita was charged with the same thing Alejandro got tried for, and he only got a suspended sentence for 3 years.
Entonces dale una chance.
¿Sabe, malito?
Ay, mamá. Ay, pero con Freddy. No, pero no es igual, porque yo conozco la madre de Gabacho. she's my boss. Ella paga mucho dinero porque me deja libre.
Cuando pienso en mi dolor, me siento solo. Pido el tiempo y
Sorry, sir, you can't come in without a coat and hat.
But his son is being tried.
Sorry, ma'am, but that's the law.
hubo guerra y se me fue un fue valiente y no volvió. Me dijo más
The fifth U.S. Circuit Court is now in session. The Honorable John A. presiding, was the defendant Alejandro Hernandez and counsel
pero llevan preso y no lo puedo olvidar. Señor, que estás en el cielo.
Alejandro Hernandez, you have been accused of the following charges. 1. Selling narcotics.
El alma de mi hijo y el otro, dale tu bendición.
Perdona, hijo. No puedes pelear.
Did you have anything to say for yourself?
No, sir.
The accused has been found guilty of the following charges. 1. Selling narcotics. 2. Resisting arrest. 3. Using abusive language when addressing an officer of the law. 4. Carrying a concealed weapon. And 5. Obstruction of justice. He is therefore sentenced to 10 years in the federal penitentiary. The case read.
Adiós templos de justicia, donde matan a matar. El prójimo que juzgaste, con Dios lo vas a pagar. Adiós a jueces parciales, según el preso justicia. Bajo esa gran capa negra, ahí cargan su malicia. Adiós mi padre y mi madre, que acaban de sentenciar. Sin clemencia, sin conciencia, ya me llevan a empezar. Que acaban de sentenciar por un delito forjado. Allá me van a dejar a un vivo sepultado. Adiós mis padres queridos, despídanse sin llorar, busquen consuelo en su vida, un día voy a regresar. Adiós también mi amorcito, siempre fuiste mi querer, busco otro hombre que te quiera, yo no sé si volveré. Adiós flores tan bonitas, en el jardín de mi madre, den consuelo a esta viejita, porque para mí es muy tarde. Vuela, vuela palomita, ya no derrames más llanto, vete por la Guadalupe, cuando pases por San.
For those of you who don't, hopefully somebody understands Spanish, but I mean those words to me, when I hear it, I think it's, if you understand the words of the last song, you'll get a good idea, the ending, a better idea.
Yeah. Any questions for the director? Yeah.
Yes, I did. We showed it in the community. I'm talking in Mexico. The country in Mexico would be the one. We showed it in Monterrey, and we showed it in Nuevo Laredo. There was a big interest in Mexico. That's why I sold the rights to Mexico. they did a write-up in Mexico City, what the paper, El Diario or something, one of the big papers did a big story in Mexico at that time. So Mexico, if we would have gone to Mexico, I think it would have been a big hit in Mexico because Mexico was really primed for it. The Chicano was really something that was going on in Mexico. As a matter of fact, during the 60s, the people thought that the Mexican Revolution was going to probably be sparked by the Chicanos. You know, they were going to be, and a lot of it, I got an opportunity to work with Echavarría, el hermano de José Luis Echavarría, Rodolfo Echavarría. They tried to get me to work on a movie with him, which is the first movie they ended up going with.
De Sangre Chicana.
De Sangre, but I'm talking about what's the guy that did the first Chicano. Jesus. I could work in that movie, but Jesus ended up taking it. And that at one time, Jesus Treviño did
this is the president of Mexico at the time. His brother was
el jefe del Banco Cinematográfico de Mexico. So no, it creates. They even offered to make me a movie star in Mexico with Agra Sanchez, you know, and he even offered me a movie to work with. Mr. Mexico, anyway, he made all kinds of movies, with La Vega, and anyway, funny story, but I told him, you know, like, I cut my throat, but he wanted me to play the Mojado, and Jorge Rivero was going to play the Coyote, and se llamaba Mojado, Wetbacks, it was a Mexican movie anyway. So he said, Efraín, long story, I told him, you know what? I think you got it backwards. I think I should be the Coyote and Rivera should be the Mojado, Leo, because if everybody looked like Jorge Rivero, all the gringos would be, bring him on, bring all the Mojados. You know, because that guy was, you know, handsome, good looking, why you make him the wetback, you know, and that way, you know. But I couldn't work with him because he only offered $1,000 at the time for 1 week of my work, and at that time I was making the money, so I didn't do it. But he told me, Efraín, you know, I can make 10 movies, you know, in 1 year with you. So it was funny, but no, there was a lot of interest, mostly from me.
So you say that you sparked more interest in the Chicano community?
Oh yes, yes. I think that the Chicanos loved every community because we went to Detroit, we went to Colorado, or, you know, mostly over Texas for sure. We covered Houston, Dallas, pero I think that the people, like Chon said, it was the idea of, for the first time, seeing ourselves on the silver screen. In other words, not that we hadn't been there, but we were telling our own stories, and that's what I think that people couldn't get over. That, golly, you know, like, you know, we did it, or, you know, like, wow, you did this, you know. It created such a buzz at the time that, you know, I just didn't know how to handle it back then. Yes, when my friend went to prison, you know, and I visited him, and I asked him, you know, how does it feel to be in prison? And he told me, you know, basically being in prison is like being buried alive. Everybody forgets you, your girlfriend. That's why then I say, goodbye, girlfriend, find yourself another man. She probably will come back. You know. The only one, and you know, your mother, you don't forget your mother, because if you have a mother, usually that's the only one that's going to visit you in prison. And that's the one that's going to, you know, keep some kind of contact to the outside world. Other than that, it's his friends, you know, girlfriends, everybody forgets you when you're in prison. So I thought it was such a, you know, so I decided to use it like, please don't bury me alive. But basically for it.
I think just behind you here.
I would like to say that it has changed, but I don't see it as by much. Even with my daughter, you know, I have a daughter. I have several, 3 daughters, but I'm saying one of my daughters that's
you
kind of
a great granddaughter.
Yeah, I have a great granddaughter too. But I'm saying, in that regard, I'm saying, in order for her to achieve, you know, she's in a high position, and I don't really want to say where because she doesn't want to. Anyway, she's trying to be very correct in a lot of things. And at this time, the company she's working for Anyway, but yes, you have to kind of adapt, and when talking to her and stuff like that, you know, my other daughters and stuff, you know, in other words, you kind of be accepted or be, it seems like you have to, I don't like it, but, you know, I see that you do have to, you know, to get up higher. I don't think it's right, I don't think it's fair, but I think that sadly, you know, that's something that, you know, you still have to do.
Okay, that generated some questions up here.
Yeah, well, just as a student here at ELAC and Chicano major, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for being here and bringing this forum to us. It's very powerful just being here. Another question on how was the budget put together? How did you guys come about getting the equipment to do something like this?
Can I say the first part of this? Because it's, you probably noticed at the end there's a lot of churches supporting this.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
Well, the first thing, what's amazing about Efraín is that he went to Trinity and said, I want to make a film. I said, well, why don't you enroll? We'll get you in as a student, 3 years, you're done. And he's like, no, I want to make the film now. So he ends up going out and said, well, tell me what I need. Well, you'll need a camera. How much do they cost? $10,000. At the same time, the Lutheran Church is coming in from Minnesota and visiting, saying, we're here to help the Chicano people. And somebody, kind of like with me, you know, saying, do you know Efraín? I said, well, you have to talk to Efraín. You know, he's one of the people you should meet with. And so Efraín meets with them, and they say, we're here to help the Chicano people. He says, good. I'm the Chicano people. I need a camera.
Basic.
And they say, great. Can you fly up to Minnesota, which he was familiar with from farming, right? And make the case to the board. So he does. They say, we're going to get you the camera. He said, great. Ship it here. So then the camera arrives, and it's almost like that scene in 2001, you know, or the chimps see this thing, and they're like, whoa! So they call up the guy that he had spoken to at the Trinity. They said, could you come here? Jack Landman, who's mentioned. Can you come here and take it out of the box for us?
We were afraid to touch it. We didn't know what to do with it.
So essentially, rather than go to school, he hires one of the teachers there to work with them as the cinematographer, to kind of get them up to speed working with that camera, which you still have, right?
Yes, we still have that.
Yeah. So that's why you see Trinity University and the Lutheran Church there. And I think it's one of the great things about Efraín is, you know, if you guys don't head off the class, you'll be supporting his next feature film, you know, because he will convince you. But the other part was, part of what almost got him into trouble, except that it was such a success, which was leveraging support.
Yeah, well, after we made the movie, because like I said, the funding we got, the camera with that, I was able to get Trinity University, the head of the department, allowed me to be able to use their equipment. Like if I went to UCLA, say, well, you're not a student, so you can't use the equipment. But the professor said, no, if you can get a student that's with you, then we'll let you use the equipment. They open up so I was able to work with, you know, some very interesting, because Trinity is a very, you know, unique, quite a very exclusive, you know, like top 20 expensive schools in the United States. It's in San Antonio. So a lot of, you know, people that are very wealthy. I mean, all the Jack Landman, Don White, all these people are multimillionaires now. I mean, they were already millionaires by their fathers, and now, you know, they've got their own thing. And you know, I hardly ever see them, but you know, they're all they're retired or whatever already. Jack Lemmon is, you know, he's done a lot. He's donated stuff at the West Side, you know, because he got to meet the people at the West Side. So, you know, it pays back, not directly to me, but I'm saying I see that, you know, they're doing something back to the community. But, you know, this is something that when that was opened up, then we still have to go out and film the whole movie, and that's why it took us so long, because we would film one scene, and then sometimes it didn't come out right, or whatever. So I became real good friends with Jack. Hey, Jack! Every time something happened, Jack, we loaded. He showed us how to load up the film, and you know.
Call him up. We're out of the film again. Can you come change it?
Yeah, change it, because we sometimes had at the beginning we had a hard time. Those of you that have ever worked with film, you got to put it in a bag and change it in there. Yes, sir.
If you were given the chance to do it again, what would be something you would include that maybe you feel was left out?
I think that I would include a better crew. That's about it.
Yeah, you had a great actor, right?
I mean, no. What I'm getting at, we think that there were some things that we weren't able to put in there. That I would have. But basically, I think that the film would still stand alone. Maybe make it. As a matter of fact, there's always somebody that comes out that wants to do another contemporary or part 2, things like that. But like I said, I have no problem with it. I sometimes cringe at when you can hear the camera rolling, and things like that, But we had one camera, and we had we would film, and Sabino would tell me, Efraín, we need more money. Okay, Sabino, whoop. Then I have to go hustle money, and then I would bring, let's film this scene or whatever. And sometimes we film a scene 2 or 3 times because we'd film it, we'd get the rushes back, and oh wow, it came out of focus or whatever. We were kind of learning on the job, but it was the Trinity students, especially Jack Lammer, who was the student instructor, that really, really helped us in doing that.
And this cost you about $60,000?
Well, a little bit, probably about, I'd say close to 50, but no, I think it was actual cash money. We're talking about $40,000 to $50,000 for all the time that we spent there.
And so you say when you finished with this the film, you showed it in different cities, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, from your empirical standpoint, what was it? Were there different reactions from the different Chicano communities about the film? Were they positive, negative?
Oh, well, to begin with, in San Antonio, it was very negative when we first came out. I mean, they came out in I thought wow, man. I said, I haven't even put out the movie, and these people are already saying that it's an ugly movie and that, it's insulting to La Raza and, they're not to see it. And I was so scared that, but then some people started saying, no, Efraín, don't worry about it, And even the LULACs had to get involved. I became a lifetime member of LULACs because they had to come and defend me, not me, but the film itself, because there was so much negativism. And LULACs made, it was in Corpus Christi that year. And anyway, LULACs came out and started kind of changing to where people would. But anyway, it was so negative of conservative Mexicanos. But I think that generated more interest, because after a while, I realized that people say, hey, as long as it's in the media, as long as you get, it was awesome. Like, I'll give an example in Laredo, where my wife's from, where I met my wife. When they told me, don't go to Laredo. Laredo is they don't like the word Chicano. And that's another thing, that here we use Chicano a lot, in California, and accepted in the newspaper, everything. In Texas, you still don't accept the word Chicano. They'll change it to Tejano. They'll change it to Mexico-Americano, to Latino, to Hispanic. They will do any damn thing they can to avoid the word Chicano. And so Mexicano, older generation, are not used to hearing Chicano, don't like to hear. My father didn't like the word Chicano, So to me, a lot of it, I thought was negative. It's a Chicano movie. Oh, well, it's not going to go over it. Laredo, don't go, because you're not going to sell, you're not going to do anything. We went in there, and that was my biggest draw. Like, we drew over $20,000 in the first week in Laredo, Texas, which is a small town, And sometimes when places that I thought it was going to go over real big, it blew in my face. And even here in East Los Angeles, where I showed the movie in a film festival here, some years back with a La Brava film festival or something. I mean, the guys, they hadn't even seen the movie, and they wanted me to edit it, or they wanted to edit it because they didn't like certain part of the movie. I go, what? I thought, here's LA, con la mera grave, and then you guys are telling me that you don't like this part, and because it offends negros, or because it offends white people. Well, shit, cut up the whole damn thing. I said, no, you're not going to show it. Do it like that, or don't show it at all. And they ended up showing it. It was supposed to be at 6. That's when I met Denny de la Paz as an actor, because I wanted him to meet him as an actor to be in one of my films. But they were supposed to show at 6. They held it all the way till about 10 o'clock at night so that people would, we were showing the movie and people were leaving, and then they would have a Q&A. As soon as Q&A, hey, we got to go turn off the lights and everything. I had to take the people outside to talk to them outside because, I was really, really surprised, that East LA, after a few years back, not at when we released it, but after that, and then some of the places that I really expected to bomb, in Utah, I wasn't in Utah, but they told me in Utah we went over real good with the Mormons or whatever up there. It's interesting, what you least expect sometimes.
Yeah. So you said you met Luis Valdez, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was that before or after?
Oh no, that's when I was doing teatro. I mean, Luis Valdez.
That was before the film?
Oh, yeah, way before the film.
Okay. Now, did you ever visit Delano, California?
I have, as a matter of fact, it's a long story, but me and Luis Valdez had a falling out when I joined Tenaz. I'm a big mouth and I get in trouble with everybody. But they invited me to Mexico City for the Tenaz. Teatro has done all kinds of teatros, you know, from everywhere, Texas. We were there. But at the time I was probably with Los Mascarones, who was the ones that were hosting it over there in Mexico City. And we'd had a little verbal discussion. So the guy had threatened to blackball me when I got to Mexico. And sure enough, when I got to Mexico, on the Luis invitation, they refused to let my teatro perform. So I really got upset with Luis because Luis never was able to allow us to perform. We had to go a different route. We went to prisons, we went to other places. But so we had some works out there. So for 26 years I hadn't seen, and then, ¿cómo se llama? Mendoza? No, the girl, the Teatro Campesino, Alma Martinez invited me to the 30th anniversary or something some years back. And I went back and, you know, we had a good time. We talked about what had happened. It wasn't really his fault, at least. It was Los Mascarones that had done that for me.
Did you ever reflect on like how people lived in Delano and then like put some concepts and ideas into your film?
No, because I've never, you know, I had never before visited, right? You know, most of my stuff, like I said, we were migrants. We didn't really. Cesar Chavez to us was doing his thing over here. Up al norte, there was smaller scales, but there was people like Cesar Chavez that they were organizing in Michigan and Indiana and Ohio and stuff like that. But I never really knew that much until when my films were coming out. Like I saw like Fresno to me and San Diego. I mean, I thought I was in Texas, you know.
I was born in Delano, California.
Okay. Well, as a matter of fact, in Salinas, there's a guy, Victor, the guy's doing a documentary. He's going to interview me in Modesto, because I have friends in Modesto. I'm going up to Modesto. So he's going to go up there to interview me Friday and Saturday. And he's doing a documentary. He's from Salinas. Pero no, I mean, Luis, Luis was my idol. I mean, Luis I thought could do everything, man. I mean, I thought he was the most talented individual, a ventriloquist, you name it.
Maybe,
Daniel también, his brother Daniel también.
Time for one last question, maybe. Over here.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah.
Okay, I go to some film festivals. I don't go, you know, too much. I'm not a film buff that I go to a lot of film stuff. Huh? Okay, I respect Robert Rodriguez, but I mean, he's at another level when it comes to financial. But when it comes to as a Chicano and a filmmaker stuff, I have nothing that I would, you know, need from Robert Rodriguez in a sense. What I would need from Robert Rodriguez would be maybe to help me get into his movies or something. No, but I'm saying because we're, you know, he wasn't raised a Chicano like he's not from the barrio. He's not, you know, raza unida. He's not, you know, Robert Rodriguez, you know, is you know, his own man, you know, and he got with the big people of Hollywood, and he was very successful. So I've never really known him. I've never really worked with him. We know of each other, and that's about it, you know. But the filmmakers, like I told Chon yesterday, I think I was the first Chicano filmmaker, and I think I'm the last Chicano filmmaker. Sadly, you know, and I don't mean to make it a, you know, but the whole onda with the Chicano, with the filmmakers, it's gotten to me very, very. It hasn't progressed. I don't see the Chicano Latino filmmakers as doing, I'm talking about within the genre, art genre, not, and I don't see it as that it has. And a lot of things that, and I don't mean again to misquote it or anything like that, but when it comes to it, I have seen 100, and I've seen one, or I've seen one, and you can be 100. They all deal with the immigration issue, which is, of course, very difficult. But how many of you have seen so many, you know, almost the same plot repeated and repeated and repeated? Same thing with drogas. You know, you see all these gang movies, and it's the same story kind of over and over and over. I said, yeah, I've seen a couple of great, movies that deal with the hardships of getting to the United States and stuff like that. But when you go to a Latino film festival, it seems like every other one is dealing with the same subject. I would like to see more personal stories or more stories that deal with kind of life that we're going through right now, whether it be a marriage, whether it be, a family, whatever. But something that would be more exposing more of us, more of who we are, more of stories, our own story, love stories, whatever. But, something, and I kind of cringe when I go, because to me, I don't mean to insult all those filmmakers. Everybody needs to tell a story, but it seems that we're telling the same story over and over and over, and I think we need to start telling different stories.
To leave you with a vision of how independent Efraín is, and something that will haunt you throughout the rest of the day, I'm going to just say that when we were in the process of recovering his films, making sure that they were preserved, beginning the process of restoring them, he found his camera and he started to make another feature film. It ultimately ended up being shot on video, and it starred Kid Frost, Jesse Borrego, and Danny De La Paz, and it was called A Lowrider Spring Break in San Quilmas. You can imagine what the film is like. It was his first upbeat film, but you kind of reached the point.
The Lowriders liked it. I mean, it's one of the most popular of the movies that I've done. It's the movie that just about 10 times people have seen that one and they've seen this one.
Yeah,
because that one was sold on, Blockbuster and all those when they were selling VHSs. I still have VHS of that movie. So. If you ever get something, it's sold very cheaply. And sadly, I don't get nothing. I don't push it because I'm not getting a penny. They rip me out big time, and but you can buy that movie real cheap on the internet. But it's a nice movie because but they changed the title, and that's a long story. But I don't get a penny of it, so I try not to push it too much. But Jesse and Danny, they tell me whenever they're on car shows and stuff like that. You'd be surprised how many people have a copy of that stupid movie. I mean, I say stupid because I'm not getting any money out of it.
Well, thank you all for coming out. I want to thank Efraín for...
I'm one of the faculty members that teaches film, and the first comment is thank you for highlighting theater, because theater reverses the banking model that us professors have this knowledge and we're going to put it into these empty people that have nothing to do with their own education. And theater works the opposite, is that you create yourself through your own education, and teatro does that. I love that you highlight that. And also the call to action that your film is all about. And I think that being in this department, being here at East LA with this long history of activism, you need to make connections between films and reality, right? So tomorrow there's a big protest, and it is immigrant rights, I know that it is a recurring theme, but tomorrow at 4 o'clock, MacArthur Park, there's a big protest. ELAC is going to be there representing. I'll be there if any of you guys want to show up. But so here on campus, the course learning objective is to learn about stereotypes, and your film completely tries to dismantle that. Thank you for that. But part of it is so that we learn about ourselves, So films that we show have to teach us about ourselves. You mentioned the film as Mirror, and if anyone is interested in taking that class, this isn't a plug for my class in particular, but I do show very, very alternative narratives to that. I mean, Jim Mendiola, I've worked with Chon before. Jim Mendiola does some really cool stuff, and even Vicious Circle plays with that a lot. But I mean, if we don't make those connections between, having this conversation and changing society, we're kind of losing the point, right? I mean, in other words, this is an abstraction of reality, but the real world is out there for us to change, right? So I invite everyone to change ourselves and change society tomorrow, right? At 4 o'clock, MacArthur Park. We all know where that's at. So if you're interested, there might be some other Chicano studies, history department students, and you might run into some faculty members, and so that we can also have a say in creating ourselves and creating ourselves.
Oh,
thank you, Leonard.
If you ever, if I'm ever here, I'll go to your class. I know because they plan to bring me back over in Riverside in San Bernardino. But I want to tell everybody, my son and I are starting a Kickstarter. For those who know what a Kickstarter is, raising funds. If you can, in the next week or so, check EfraínGutierrez.com. And he's trying to get a theatrical release kind of on this. And we're selling or pledging. You can buy the movie real cheap. You can buy posters, the scripts, all kinds of things, on that Kickstarter. So if you ever interested in any of my work, it's on EfraínGutierrez.com.
Great. Okay, thank you, folks. Thank
Yeah.
you.